Going into high school, I was not going to follow a traditional path of, going to the local high school here. And I was just very ambitious and I really wanted to get out and make my mark on the world. And I thought that going to school early would help me do so. And what's interesting is the time frame was circa 2008, which I know everybody listening to this, it'll either make you pucker a little bit, or it'll make your spine shiver, because 2008 was really the financial collapse of the Great Recession. And so I remember sitting in economics class and watching like a Lehman Brothers go under, which nobody ever thought was possible. So I got this front row education to finance, and I thought my trajectory would be in finance. But as I started going through my college years, I got my first degree at 16, and then I went off to Florida State and got my second degree, which I thought I would go off to maybe a Wharton or a Harvard. But at the time, a lot of the programs that I want to get into were closing. And so my natural self, I'm very entrepreneurial. As a kid, I was like going door to door, knocking and trying to sell my mom's soda cans to people, just anything that I could do to get out of the house and quit driving my parents crazy with my overactive mind. And also sort of scratch that entrepreneurial itch that I had. And so getting into real estate was, I don't want to say the only thing to do in this area, but we live in an area that's very focused on resort sales and development. And it was a natural progression, not one that I thought I would stay in.
But, I'm sure that everybody's going to say, who's going to buy a second home? Who's going to buy a resort home from some 18-year-old kid?
You know what's funny about that? And I know you've had a couple of these guys on your podcast, but $1 million listing at the time that I was getting into the business was becoming notable and popular. And I think it actually gave a platform for people to look at real estate as sort of a glamorous business. And so I would show up to appointments at the ripe age of 18, driving my jet black Honda Element, thinking I was a power broker. And people would go, is your dad showing up? Like, where are your parents? Are you even out of high school? Are you just someone's assistant? I mean, I got it all, everything you can imagine. And I started to develop this response, and because I knew it was going to happen, right? The first few times it sort of kicks you, and you feel like your ego gets hurt, but then you expect it and you can have a little fun with it. And this, for anybody that's listening, no matter what age you are, I think all of us at every phase of our career, now I got all these gray hairs come out of my 32-year-old head, and I started to go, ugh. But as a young guy, I would just embrace these wild comments. When people were like, oh my God, your baby face, I'd be like, I know. I'm in between my sessions. Like I figured I could show this house real quick on the side, like any way that I could deflect and also create sort of some humor around it. It was a bonding experience. And I realized very early on that building relationship and connection, I became endearing to a lot of the clients that I would show up and potentially show a property to. They would go, man, this guy reminds me of my grandson, or, I really like his drive. I can connect with that. And instead of selling a house, I focused on how could I create relationship and, find a contrast instantly with somebody.
Yeah. And, and really let's be honest. Not everybody wants to spend $15 or $20 million on a purchase.
That's right.
But that person does have $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, $200,000 to spend a week or a month at the beach. And they're thinking in their head, hey, if I spend $100,000 for a 2-week vacation at the beach, it's okay because I didn't have to spend $15 million to buy it. And that,
exactly.
That really is the mentality.
I can rent the lifestyle. Yeah. I can come down. My family's relaxed. I know we're safe here.
Yeah.
Like all of the reasons to have a transactional approach to spending time in a market, like a lot of us do when we go stay at our favorite hotel. But I think that's the beauty of sort of this Airbnb, VRBO driven market. What's interesting when you look at Florida, the hotel lobbies are all in the south part of the state. And here in Walton County, we don't allow any development commercially or residentially that's taller than 50 feet. So it creates Yeah, that may be a new one, but it creates a very casual approach to building. And when people drive down 30A, they look left and right. They see all this state preserved forest, this federal land, and they don't see any of these huge high rises because of that. That preservation was enacted about 20 years ago.
That's so cool. So, Jonathan, let me ask you: Are you licensed anywhere else, or just here in Florida?
So our team is licensed in other areas. I personally am not. I'm only licensed in Florida, but I have team members that serve Florida, Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas, Colorado. So we've got quite a bit of coverage.
That's awesome. And what's the theory behind that? Like, are you doing that because those are feeder markets into Florida, or are you doing that because you're doing an expansion of your brand?
So I would say both. One, the expansion of the brand opportunity happens like we've got an amazing listing in Brentwood and Nashville, Tennessee. Those are clients of mine here on 30A that said, Jonathon, like we really, really like, we don't like doing transactions without you. We really want your help.
Yeah.
Can you, come into this market and help us attain this? And with Compass, it made it very easy because we've got a listing partner there. We're able to come along on the marketing side and inject energy. And so I think that that's an opportunity for us to test working in another market. But for the most part, all of the feeder markets that come down to Florida, their primary homes are really the jewels that we want to get to them first. So we want to be able to help them where they're at, and then eventually help either relocate or bring them down here for a second, third, fourth, or fifth home. And being able to capture them there is a lot easier than capturing them in my market, because
Right.
when you're on 30A, like Glennda, you may only be here for a week, right? I may have a week out of the year to maybe get in front of you through either my signage. You could see my airport billboards when you're flying in and out of the counties. But for the most part, it's a lot easier for us to reach people in their home market. And that's why we would want to start in those origin spaces and make sure we can serve them at a high and consistent level in both areas.
Well, it's funny that you say that they want the Spears experience,
Yep.
no matter where they are. And that's one thing that I noticed, because I would relocate a client to Boca, or I would relocate them to San Antonio, or I would relocate them to LA, and they would be like, "Yeah, we're not going to do anything without you." And I was like, "No, no, no, no. I can connect you." And they're like, "Well, could you just fly out here? Like,
Yeah.
we'll just pay for you to fly out here and go with us." And it was so interesting to me that when you have this brand experience, um, it, they're not buying into you because about 123 Banana Street in Brentwood. They're buying into the entire experience that they've had with you, the marketing, the knowledge, the way that you negotiate, your ability to look at the data and interpret it for them. And it really is a Spears experience.
Likability, trust, relationship. It's funny. Our mission statement is all about building lifelong relationships and creating raving fans. So I always tell my agents, it's like when you're deer in the headlights and you don't really know what to do, right? There's all of these things that are happening outside of your control. The market's shifting. There's geopolitical things happening. The stock market shifted, whatever that is. I want you to go back to the core of why you're here. And if any of you guys on this call don't have a mission statement, I'd highly encourage you to go and develop one and spend some time with it. This took me years and years to just boil down the essence of why. Why am I? A mission is about why. Like, what makes me get up every day and want to do this? It's to create lifelong relationships, the ones that, they go on to the next generation, and to make raving fans, which is all about consistent process. So the reason that you may go to Starbucks every single day, and Glennda, I don't know if you're a Starbucks girl or not, but whatever that looks like for you, wherever you're a repeat customer, it's because you appreciate the product and the process. We want to create the same thing in our business. And let me go a little step deeper, because this is a nugget that I think all of us will grab hold of. 99% of our industry are not focused on creating consistent processes. They're not focused on, how do I do this over the long haul? They're really just about reactively going after the hottest business they possibly can.
Right.
And let me just say this. If you're not focused on creating those systems and processes and ultimately organization, you're just a hobbyist. You're not a professional. And if you think about a professional who gets up every day and they go out and they get in their field, they're working on multiple things. They're getting in the gym, they're getting their weights done. They're going out and they're working on conditioning. They're with a massage therapist trying to make sure their body is healthy and they can get out and perform at the highest level. They're not down there at the range just hitting balls, arbitrarily having cigars with the boys. A lot of us as real estate agents, we wake up and we go, what am I going to do today? Let's pick up the phone and figure out who I'm going to call. No, plan ahead, have an ideal daily schedule, understand what would be ideal every single day. How could you lean into that? And ultimately, that's how you'd make that shift from somebody who's just approaching this business as a hobby, like the soccer mom that has a real estate license, to somebody that's like full-fledged professional. They care about it. They're in it day in, day out. They're as sharp as a tack because they're in that market, being the mayor of their market every single day.